Springfield's Talk 1041. Good Monday morning. Welcome to the show. Streaming live, KSGF.com. A lot of events taking place over the weekend. Of course, Friday, there was the non-sentencing of Donald Trump, allowing the media to call him a convicted felon, which I don't know if they realize that in their minds, of course, I think this is really sticking it to him, sticking it to his supporters. But what they fail to realize is it is just a demonstration of something else that he's overcome, given that that particular case hasn't been seen, even by legal experts, as anything other than political lawfare. It's just another badge of honor of sorts, of a corrupt system trying to take down the political opposition that's supported by the majority of Americans. And it's just something else that he overcame. And there seems to be this lack of recognition. Of course, it's believed that it will be overturned on appeal anyhow, so they will no longer get to utilize that terminology. I don't think it matters. Go for it. Knock yourselves out. Trump was allowed to finally speak to the court, and he gave a statement, and we'll play that audio coming up in its entirety. It's just a few minutes long. It's nothing terribly long, but I think it's pretty important to hear him lay out his case as to why it was illegitimate, which, again, most of us recognize, as do legal scholars, and he points that out. But we'll play that audio coming up. Making the rounds also, Zuckerberg on with Joe Rogan. And among other things, talking about how, in his terms, brutal it was that the Biden administration was in threatening them. And Zuckerberg noting that it went from phone calls of suggestions to these different divisions of the government when they were refusing to comply with all of the censorship requests, though they did some of them. But because they did not completely turn over the reins of Facebook to the Biden administration and allow them to micromanage and call all of the censorship shots, that they began to come after his other companies, just essentially doing what it is that corrupt totalitarian regimes do. And he said it was brutal. There was also interesting discussion about COVID and how they dealt with COVID, quote, disinformation. It's one of the reasons, again, I think that Joe Rogan's platform and his approach is one that is really craved by people, because that particular COVID discussion between he and Zuckerberg was one in which Rogan disagreed with him, but not in this gotcha sort of way, not in a mean-spirited sort of way, but you had two different guys here that were just, having a conversation about this stuff, and you get a lot of insight out of it. Joe Biden also, during a press conference, this guy claimed that not only could he beat Donald Trump, but that Kamala Harris could have beat him as well if she ran for president. I'm telling you, the guy, his marbles are gone. I mean, they're not even rolling around in there. I mean, he's up there during a press conference saying, "I could have beat him," and Kamala could have beat him as well. Well, she ran against him, and she did not beat him. I'm not sure who he thinks ran against Trump in that moment. There wasn't a follow-up question asked, probably just out of sheer empathy or sympathy for the man to just be on full display dementia in such a fashion. And then we'll have Congressman Burleson as well coming up later in the program. That should be the 8 o'clock hour. We've got weather. We're going to see a warming trend, which is nice. Right now, the latest news update.
The first alert forecast from Cullerton, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 31. Tonight mostly clear with a low around 22. For your Tuesday, mostly sunny with a high near 39. And Wednesday it's going to warm back up, sunny with a high near 41.
Streaming live, KSGF.com. Oh, let me get my, let's see. Oh, where did I save this? Here we go. I think that this is, and you may have heard this clip. It aired, well, I think it first ran the latter part of last week, and there was a real messaging problem that the Democrats were having in California about whether they were prepared, they weren't prepared, they were prepared. They had enough firefighters, they didn't have enough firefighters, they were running out of water. No, they weren't running out of water. And there's some, a little bit of finger pointing going on at the same time. Gavin Newsom, when asked why are the fire hydrants not producing water, he said, well, you're going to have to ask the local people about that. So a lot of evasiveness. There's a lot of that's not my job, that's not my responsibility, and messages that contradict one another. On one hand, and even over the weekend, the director of FEMA saying that, hey, they were 100% prepared for this. Acting as if everything is fine. But then on the other hand, they talk about, well, when this thing's wrapped up, we're going to have to get to the bottom of what went wrong. So they try to, on one hand, claim what you're seeing, you're not seeing, everything is okay. But then when they get into the, quote, accountability mode, they act as if, well, don't you worry, there's going to be an investigation. We're going to get on top of this. Well, on top of what? because in front of that camera guy over there, you said everything was fine. There was this is something that's gone a bit viral, largely because I think that it really sums up the way that these wildfires are being handled out in the Los Angeles area. And I'll explain what you're going to hear. This is from a local news affiliate, and the first part of it is audio. And I'm not sure. I think it may be the individual who had run for mayor of Los Angeles at one point, but I could be wrong. The point being is you're going to hear the individual talking to, I get the news anchor about how there's a water shortage. And the reasons for the water shortage. And then when it goes back to the news anchor, essentially fact checks him. Well, now we haven't been told by anyone officially there's a water shortage. And then it goes to one of their own reporters on the scene. So that's the audio that you're going to hear from one of the local TV stations in the Los Angeles area.
You got to have water. And my understanding is the reservoir was not refilled in time and in a timely manner to keep the hydrants going. So that's a failure, whether on DWP's part or another city agency. But this is basic stuff. This isn't high science here. And it's all about leadership and management that we're seeing a failure of. And all of these residents are paying the ultimate price for that.
Despite what you have heard from Caruso, no firefighters have told us that they are running out of water.
And let's go out to Gigi Gracia. She is live in Pacific Palisades. I know your signal's not the best, but Gigi, what can you tell us?
Well, firefighters have told me they have no water on this block, and you may be able to make out the ember storm that we're in the middle of right now. This house going to be a total loss. They have no water to put on this fire.
So you go from I don't know if it's the person that was packaging the story or the anchor, because this is all audio, but saying, well, now we've not gotten any word from any firefighters that there is a shortage of water, and then goes straight to one of their own reporters, and she opens with, yeah, they're just standing here watching buildings burn because they say that there's no water. The way that they operate is oftentimes the media and the left that runs so much of the media is they get in their head, here is the truth. And the truth is that this is being handled fine. So when they hear reports that indicate incompetence, unless they get official word from their official sources, it doesn't count. So it doesn't matter how many people are talking about the water shortages. It doesn't matter how many videos that you see on social media of firefighters trying and failing to get water out of the fire hydrants because, in the words of that one news person, well, we haven't officially been told by any firefighters officially that is the case, just to make that notation. And this is how they deal with so much of this. An example is the gangs, the Venezuelan gangs that were in specifically Aurora, Colorado. And you see video of the gangs, videos of them going door to door. You have 911 calls to people or from people who are being harassed by the gangs. You have calls after shootings taking place. I mean, everyone is talking about these gangs, but the city leaders, except for one, well, we don't have any official reports about this. The same way that the Haitian situation, the Haitian that were shipped into wherever a town that was, I forget where it is now, and acting as if it's no big deal. Oh, we're not getting any official reports, claiming that at the time Trump and J.D. Vance were spreading disinformation when all they were doing is repeating what the citizens were saying. And this is how this stuff gets dealt. COVID was another example of this. It didn't matter by the people who are in authority what evidence there was, what evidence there wasn't. Didn't matter what they would see with their own eyes. If their official people did not tell them, then it didn't count. And that's how they operate. And so it should be no surprise, and this is a demonstration of it. Unfortunately, people are waking up when you've got this news story. You have a person that you have on to give you information. They tell you what you don't want to hear. In that case, they're out of water. And then, well, we haven't officially been told that by anyone. And you go straight to your out in the field reporter, and she's out there saying, yeah, we're here with firefighters. And it may not be an official press release. It may not be the head of the union. It may not be your contact that you, quote, trust for official verification. But I'm telling you, firefighters are out here, and they're watching this home burn to the ground because there is no water.
I'm really glad she did that fact check, because it really shouldn't be a left or a right issue.
Well, and I don't think she even was. I don't know that she was even sitting there listening in to that previous point. They threw it out to her. And so I'm not sure that she even necessarily knew she was contradicting the previous story. She may very well have.
I think she probably did, because I think
they
get a feed.
Yeah. Sometimes, though, I think that, they'll, how it is. It's the same here. She could have been talking to someone and they're like, oh, you're coming up in 5,
yeah,
that sort of thing.
True.
But she could have been sitting there monitoring it as well. But either which way, the whole point of her story, I mean, they were sitting there watching this house burn to the ground, and so the reason being is because there wasn't any water. Let me find a story here. I've got apparently one of the empty reservoirs, or the empty reservoir, 117 million gallon Santa Ynez reservoir was empty and down for maintenance when the fire was sparked. Friday, officials confirmed the reservoir had been down for nearly a year, closing in February 2024 for maintenance to the cover of the reservoir. The New York Times reported that a contractor was hired in November to fix a crack in the cover. It is unclear why the reservoir itself had to be shut down for the extended period of time. And so, this appears to be the reason that it's clearly not a top priority. If over a year this thing had been shut down, they knew the odds of these just all of this. It's bad prep. It's not proactive. You've got different types of leadership. You have the types of leadership, and I keep using it as an example because it's such a stark example of how somebody like Governor DeSantis in Florida deals with stuff, and that is it's a difference between somebody who has an emergency fund savings account and somebody who doesn't and decides to live paycheck to paycheck. It is the difference between somebody who has an emergency kit in the trunk of their car and someone who does not. It's the difference between somebody who has a food supply in case of some sort of emergency and somebody who does not. Now, you can claim all day long, and there's truth to it, well, I didn't know I was going to lose my job. It's not my fault I lost my job. Well, that's true, but that's why you save. Well, I didn't know that I was going to get a flat tire, or that I was going to end up in some sort of accident in which it would benefit me to have an emergency kit in my trunk. Yeah, that's right. You probably didn't know. It could potentially happen, but that's why you do those things. You prepare ahead of time in case of an emergency. And so what they're trying to do is conflate the fact that, these are natural disasters and, hurricane level winds and all of these horrible things, and it's out of control. And you have to understand that no one is really disputing that. It is the preparedness level for it. And that's the difference between the sort of leadership you see in California, specifically narrowing down to Los Angeles, versus what you see in Florida. Or California, Los Angeles versus Florida. Florida, you don't know when the hurricanes are coming. Odds are that they are going to come. And you prepare ahead of time so that dealing with it is as manageable as possible. And it's just a different mindset. There are people in life who plan ahead, and some people would argue there's planning ahead reasonably, and then there's like crazies, like they go overboard, and then there's the other end of the spectrum. It's just live day to day, and when an emergency occurs, just kind of deal with it as best as you can, and that's what we're watching play out. Now, what you also have, part of the problem, we'll play audio coming up. Yeah, you got Biden. He's sitting there in the Oval Office, and on the screen are these different leaders. And what is it? You got Gavin Newsom up there. And his complaint, and he's asking, though he doesn't get into specifics, that something be done about what he says is disinformation that's being spread. Like, he's at least somewhat responsible for responding to these wildfires. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. If you have home buying needs, home selling needs, then she is your absolute go-to. She will take care of you. One of the benefits of having her with her experience, specifically in the area or long-term success, is that if you are selling your home or maybe you're purchasing a home, whichever, but there are things that come along with it. A lot of times this is you're going to sell it, there's the inspection, and then the buyer, the potential buyer, like, yeah, we're going to give you what you want in terms of asking price, but there's a little bit of termite damage. We'd like that remedied. The sidewalk is a little unlevel. We'd like that taken care of. And there may be a list of things, and that's not uncommon, but it's not necessarily common for you to have all of those contacts or to know where to start. I mean, yeah, you can get online and do a Google search, but that doesn't really tell you as much as somebody who works with these people on an almost daily basis because of what she does, and that's Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. So that's one of the many benefits that comes along with utilizing her expertise and those connections that she has. It just makes it so much easier for you. So whether it's buying or selling, Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. All right, coming up, we're going to play Newsom and his call for censorship to prevent people from criticizing him and questioning him when it comes to his responsibilities as governor of the state of California in response to these fires. Also, DeSantis really giving it to the media. And then, and I'm glad that this occurred. Speaking of disinformation that Gavin Newsom is so concerned about, Kamala Harris has been out there spreading disinformation about insurance companies and convincing people, and she's not the only one, that insurance companies just they canceled all of these different fire protections for people, and that's not what has occurred by any stretch. And so one of the insurance companies' spokesperson or CEO spoke out and explained, first off, what she's saying is not only not true, but it's dangerous for her to be spreading this disinformation. But here is the truth. And it's not a hidden truth. It's just when you have somebody like Kamala Harris, and there are others, and then it gets traction on social media claiming that insurance companies just months ago all of the sudden decided to cancel all of these different policies that dealt with fire specifically, people believe it. And this is just one of those cases when it isn't true. So more on that as well coming up. Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line 447 KSGF.
Springfield's Talk 1041, Sarah Myers here, and the Pyramid Roofing Company. Between the winter weather and the fluctuating temperatures, winter, it can just be really brutal on your roof. Now, if you have experienced any type of drip or leak or even yellowing on your ceiling, I do want to recommend my friends over at the Pyramid Roofing Company. Now, the Pyramid team, they offer free roof inspections, and they do a very thorough one at that. They check everything from your gutters to your vents, and they even do an attic inspection, and they check your decking as well. And then they come up with the best solution that's going to work for both you and your home. And sometimes that doesn't need a whole new roof, but maybe just a simple roof repair. So if it is time to schedule that free roof inspection, make sure to do it now before winter decides that it's going to hit again. Now, you can find all of the contact information for the Pyramid Roofing Company under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com. Your first alert forecast from Color 10 Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 31. Tonight, mostly clear with a low around 22. For your Tuesday, mostly sunny with a high near 39. And on Wednesday, sunny with a high near 41.
Speaking of Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line, a lot of feedback congratulating you on your show Saturday.
Thank you. I actually have not checked that yet.
Okay, well,
I need to do that.
you should do that.
Okay, well, I might just do that right now.
You need to accept the praise from your fans.
Oh, well, that makes me feel good.
Yeah, Saturday mornings, 10 a.m.
That's me.
Yep, here, Miss Sarah.
That's me.
All righty. Which of these audios? Okay, let's go. This is one of these Oval Office sort of photo op things in order to show that Biden's handling stuff, which at this point, why? I mean, really? I guess because they got to do something with their time. I don't mean, let's be honest, if Biden were completely absent from last week through the inauguration, I don't think anyone would be surprised. I don't think anyone would even think about it, to be honest with you. I mean, at this point, casual observers notice that Trump is the one that's really making things happen at this point, in the capacities that he's able to, and so Biden having this Oval Office video conference with Gavin Newsom and some of these others, it's just okay, whatever, it's fine. One of the areas of concern for Gavin Newsom is that he's being questioned, and he's not looking good in this. Gavin Newsom is watching burn up as quickly as these neighborhoods his presidential ambitions. And as if California weren't a dumpster fire enough in his leadership, his time as governor there, this is just icing on the cake. And what he doesn't like is when he gets asked questions. And one of the videos that has gone viral, of course, is the woman that asked him why is this happening, and he tells her, I'm on the phone right now, right? And he holds up the phone. He goes, this is why I'm on the phone right now with the president figuring this out. And she calls him out. She says, I want to hear this call. I don't believe you. I told him I don't believe you. And he's like, well, I've been trying to get a hold of him. That's why I'm walking around. I can't get a signal. All right, Michael Scott. And so none of this looks good for him. He has gotten criticized for, putting the responsibility on others when he's pointedly asked, what about this? Well, that's the local people you have to talk to and so forth. And so, as you can imagine, social media, given that the ability of the Democrats to censor as much as they once did on social media has diminished greatly, it is allowing for people to have a better sense of what's actually going on, which, of course, is what they do not want. And Gavin Newsom addresses that in this Oval Office video conference.
I ask you, we've got to deal with this misinformation. There are hurricane force winds of mis and disinformation lies. People want to divide this country, and we're going to have to address that as well. And it breaks my heart as people are suffering and struggling. That we're up against those hurricane forces as well.
You know what I mean? One of the things that makes him so just gross? It's that, and he did it, what was it? Oh, whenever Anderson Cooper said, I hate to ask you this, but, President-elect Trump says that you have responsibility in this. That it's like the righteous indignation and using as a shield, using the victims. Like, it just makes me sick that while people are dying, that people would spread disinformation about me. Oh, it just makes me sick knowing that people are losing their livelihoods, that President Trump would try and politicize this. It's just it's so slimy and pathetic and lazy, and it's just gross. The guy makes me want to gag. I just can't, it's too much. There's a balance. Clinton was really good. Bill Clinton was good about making you feel like he really, just really felt your pain. I feel your pain. And we look back on it now, and it seems a little cartoonish, but it was very effective. He was very, very good at it. But this is just like too much. It's like, okay, all right, we get it already. But what's the movie with Christopher Walken? You're not going to know.
I never know.
Where he's got Christopher, I can't believe I forget because it's just such a classic movie. And Christopher Walken, he has this power where when he touches people, he can see their future. And he ends up shaking hands with I believe it's a U.S. Senator, maybe from California.
Is it The Dead Zone?
Yeah, The Dead Zone, yes, thank you. And Martin Sheen plays this guy, and Christopher Walken sees that he's going to become this madman that launches a nuclear war. And so he's got to decide, should I kill him or not? And he decides he's going to kill him. And he goes to this town hall event, and when he fires off a shot, Martin Sheen's character picks up this baby and holds it up, in order to protect himself from any incoming bullets. And, of course, there's a photo of it. It's the end of his political career. But that's what, to me, Gavin Newsom or any of these people who bear responsibility in this, whether it is the lack of preparedness that has allowed it to be much more devastating than it otherwise would have been, or just the response to it in the aftermath. It's still ongoing. This whole, how dare you whenever there are people dying? Oh, it just breaks my heart. He said, it's just, it's Martin Sheen holding up that baby in order to protect himself from the bullets. And it's Gavin Newsom and any of these other Democrats holding up the charred remains of victims in order to protect themselves from criticism. What is particularly humorous to me is that here you've got, so Kamala Harris is sitting there with Biden while Newsom is talking about disinformation. And one of the biggest portions of disinformation that has been out there, it was spread by Kamala Harris, and that is that these insurance companies were just canceling insurance policies on people. And so what a lot of people, what they believed based off what Harris and others are saying is that, and of course, conspiracy theory breeds from this, that one day people who have these policies are told, oh, by the way, we're just canceling the fire portion of your policy. Well, that's not what has happened here. And in fact, finally, the president and CEO of the American Property Casualty Insurance Association, so it's not an insurance company, but it's an association of the different insurance companies. His name's David Sampson, and he told Fox Business News, quote, "It is false, wrong, and dangerous to even insinuate that insurers are abandoning their customers, and it's especially concerning coming from a former California statewide elected official who should know the law," adding insurers are committed to protecting the safety of those affected and providing expedited relief to their policy holders for their covered losses. He noted that the California law prohibits insurers from canceling an insurance policy during its term, except for very limited exceptions, like if somebody just doesn't pay their premiums or if there's fraud involved. And he added, so the implication that people who have insurance coverage effective on January 7th are being canceled just to leave that impression with people and to create that fear is irresponsible in my view. Now, there's also some people who, or there's the information being spread that, well, they canceled a few months before. So there wasn't any canceling. Now, I don't know about you. Let's try to illustrate this here. We have employer-offered health insurance, and every year, we have that time of enrollment. If you want, you got to go through it. And sometimes, based off of what the offerings are, the company will switch and go to someone else because what the company decided that was in the best interest of the employees in terms of health insurance was something that was not going to be offered by the current health insurance provider. Now, that's not canceling anything, and it's somewhat similar in fashion. What you have out in California is, because of the cost, and I'll explain that in a moment, that a number of insurance companies have provided fire coverage discontinued that for future enrollment. So it's not something, if you signed up for insurance and it covers fire until this particular date, that none of that, in fact, it's illegal to cancel that. They may not offer it for in the future, or what happens is when it comes to, for a lot of these people, the insurance companies say, hey, just so you know, we are no longer covering the fire component to this. So this isn't anything that would have caught anyone off guard or shouldn't have, or anything that was done, in a way that broke what was the contractual commitment made. Now, the reason that they've done this, we talked about this a bit last week, is because California also does not allow, by law, these insurance companies to raise rates in order to offset losses due to disasters like fire. And so because of that, and over the years, the leadership's demonstration that they aren't fixing any of the problems. So the forests that have thick underbrush that they refuse to clean up, the desire to prioritize these little fish instead of making water more accessible to fight fires. I mean, these are all things that needed to be done, and this isn't anything that's a surprise. There have been people, they've been saying this every time there's a fire. Trump has been saying it for a couple of years now. Here are some of the things that need to happen, and they refuse to do it. And so there continue to be fires at an increasing rate that are becoming much more and more expensive. And so because the insurance companies are not allowed to adjust to accommodate that because of the same leadership in California, they can't they can't, it doesn't work. The numbers don't work. So that particular offering, some of them have had to drop from their coverage. Again, not during a period of time that somebody has already signed a contract, but subsequent when they re-up for the following year. So that's what has occurred. Obviously not convenient, but those are conditions that have been created by, just like all of this, by the government. So to go out there, and this is typical of the left, particularly when it comes to economic issues, they create conditions that force private industry to behave in a certain manner, and then the politicians who create those conditions point the finger at the businesses, blaming them for it. Inflation's a perfect example, of course. What we heard during the presidential campaign is that, well, first, inflation didn't exist, but then when they couldn't deny it any longer, they blamed the local business owner for raising prices, claiming that they were just trying to gouge you in your time of need, while the prices were being raised because their cost went up. And so this is similar in fashion. And I know how people are when it comes to insurance companies, and particularly when things don't go one's way. But to claim that insurance companies are just canceling people's fire coverage, during this period of time is absolutely 100% not true. But it's standard approach for the Democrat Party. Create conditions that have a particular result and then blame the people who are trying to deal with that result beyond their control and accuse them of being the problem. So this isn't anything new, but it's pretty dark. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. All right, let's look at the time here. All right, Gavin Newsom. Sorry, Ron DeSantis, the opposite of Gavin Newsom, doing a press conference. And as usual, the press, they set out to get other Republicans to criticize Donald Trump. And this was one of those efforts when it came to Donald Trump criticize. It's realized even the premise of how bizarre all of this is, that people are not supposed to question or criticize the people who are in charge of dealing with this. The insanity of that. I mean, it doesn't mean that every criticism is an accurate one. It doesn't mean that every criticism is a valid one. There may be some gray area. This is why adults have these conversations. And so this whole boy, it just really summed up the absurdity of it with Anderson Cooper when he said, I hate to ask you this, but what, when he was talking to Gavin Newsom about his, why do you hate to ask him that? Is that not your job? And is it not his job to be responsible for these things? But because they're Democrats, you're not supposed to question them. And, of course, Donald Trump did. Here's Ron DeSantis responding to comments or questions from the media about Trump asking these questions.
Is it appropriate for people in your industry to try to create division and to try to create narratives anytime these things happen? Now, you're not as interested in doing that because Newsom is a D. If Newsom was a Republican, you guys would go you would have him nailed to the wall for what they're doing over there. And I know we've dealt with it. We just assume in Florida, anytime something happens, it's going to be politicized by the media. So you guys sitting in judgment of Donald Trump, I mean, excuse me, I think your track record of politicizing these things is very, very bad.
Okay, last question.
Should resign at the
I remember when we had the Surfside Tower collapse, I had people from the Washington Post trying to blame me for it immediately without having any facts or anything. Oh, he didn't declare a state of emergency. First of all, state of emergency doesn't mean you can't respond. It's all that. Excuse me?
Biden did it.
Well, but what I'm telling you is you guys are trying to make an issue of it when I have watched from this seat. In fact, when I got elected governor, I was meeting with some of the other Republican governors, and what they would say is, hey, if you have a natural disaster, just know media's coming at you. They're going to do it. It's not the same. That mayor of L.A., if that were a Republican mayor, I could only imagine what that would do. I mean, you know the fires are at high risk, and you try to go to Africa or wherever she was to go on some type of voyage. You should have been there preparing and doing that. And yet I don't see a lot of heat being directed in that thing. And so, I'd like to see some balance on how this is done. You could criticize the president-elect, but I think you also have to hold these other people accountable, and I have not seen that.
It's such a conflict. On one hand, the presentation or the claim that Donald Trump is this person that is a dictator and doesn't ever want to be criticized. Yet, what is their biggest complaint? How dare you criticize Gavin Newsom? How dare you criticize Karen Bass? How dare you criticize? It is a projection, once again, from these folks. Regarding whether or not Gavin Newsom should resign, I mean, my answer would be he should have resigned a long time ago, well before this, because of what he's done, the slow roll disaster that he's turned California into. I mean, this is just one of many examples of a guy who has taken what should be the greatest state, arguably, because of its resources, its geography, its landscape, all of these aspects make California what should be the single greatest state, the place that most people are flocking to, yet it has the greatest net loss, vying with New York, of any other state in the Union. But to the broader problem about whether or not Gavin Newsom should resign is the fact that particularly, and this is government, but Democrats really run with the ball on this, and that is no one is ever held accountable for their failures. No one. I mean, you look at Afghanistan, you look at the border, you look at the economy, all of these people who have said one thing and then the opposite result occurred, whether it was the economy, and I think Janet Yellen finally was like, well, I don't know why I got it wrong. I mean, these people, there's never a demonstration that any failure is unacceptable. There is not a demonstration of standards. Never are we, are we told as the American people, okay, well, look, this was a failure. This is an unacceptable failure. And now when it comes to elected officials, of course, you're talking about somewhat of a different situation because that's up to the people. And the people of California continue to reward failure, particularly in blue counties. I know the state as a whole, there are a lot of people that don't vote to reward failure, but there's enough people in order to keep the failures in there. And why would they behave any differently? But this refusal whether it is a government official refusing to hold department heads accountable or the voters refusing to hold the elected officials accountable, are all part of the problem. And an explanation as to why they don't ever bother to fix anything. Because why should they? Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. All righty, let's see here. The upcoming hour, Donald Trump will play his audio, his response to Judge Merchan's political witch hunt. He was finally allowed to speak, and so he did. We will play that. Also, Joe Biden at an event claiming that he could have beaten Trump and Kamala Harris could have beaten him as well, apparently forgetting that she is the one who ran against him and that she did not beat him. So just another reminder as to how much better off we are going to be in a matter of days. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Welcome to the show. We are streaming live, KSGF.com, the KSGF app. Any show of the show you miss, Spotify, iTunes, also the app. And you can watch us live on YouTube. Have we tried the Facebook again? The Facebook
I have
route?
not.
I'm not
but
calling it the Facebook, like a old person.
no, maybe
the Facebook route.
Maybe I'll try it tomorrow. We'll see.
All right, with old Zuckerberg saying that they're going to quit doing the censorship. Later in the program, we'll play some audio. He was on with Joe Rogan talking about how brutal the Biden administration was. I mean, sometimes screaming and yelling and cursing at them for refusing to remove certain things. Of course, we were accustomed to seeing the things they did remove. He said that they oftentimes did not, particularly when it came to satire. And it got to the point they started coming after his different businesses and seeking to destroy him, which is what they're trying to do to Elon Musk as best as possible as well. But Trump's the dictator. Trump is the dictator. Justine Bateman, which I don't know if you remember Justine Bateman. It depends on your age. You may have had a crush on her when she was on Family Ties. She is the sister of Jason Bateman, and by all casual observances, probably politically in opposition, Jason Bateman, who is one of my favorite actors. I really, really like him. He's one of those that if he's in something, I'll watch it. In fact, my wife and I watched this movie, I think it was on Netflix, that he was in called Carry On. And afterwards, we were like, that movie was really bad. She goes, did he produce it or something? Why was he even in it? But I keep seeing people post like different videos and things and references to it. So I don't know. Maybe it's a better movie than we thought that it was. But anyhow, he's politically a lefty. And Justine Bateman, who really was off the radar, it seemed like for a while, but she started doing some interviews regarding AI, and she seems to be more, I don't know that you'd say conservative, but maybe libertarian. I don't know what she is. But she's become more and more vocal in calling out some of these people when it comes to censorship. She's been calling out the Democrat leadership in California because of the handling of the wildfires and just talking about the importance of voting for, different people for different outcomes. And the latest target of hers has been Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. And I'm telling you, I do not disagree with her. Not that I've disagreed with things that she said in the past, but so there was footage from Fox 11 LA of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle touring the damage, getting tours of the damage and talking with people who are responsible for the, handling the fires. And the I guess, rhetorical question that she was asking is like, why? Who are they? I mean, they don't. What do they have to do with it? They're not an elected official. They're celebrities. Like, there's not enough for these people to worry about. They're told you got to take some time out of what you're doing in order to do photo ops with these two pieces of work. Bateman wrote on X, Meghan Markle and Harry are no better than ambulance chasers. What a repulsive photo op they achieved. They are touring the damage, she asked, referring to the media footage that she had reposted on the social platform, asking, are they politicians now? They don't live here. They're tourists, disaster tourists. And I don't know that I think some of it is probably disaster tourism. You get curious. But I think some of it's narcissism. And you have these two individuals that don't really offer up any sort of contributions in a meaningful way to society as a whole. And I think that they believe that they, just by showing up, are doing something. That just by showing up, people seeing and knowing that they care because they are so important, that is going to make a difference, and it's just going to bring just a little bit of peace to those who have lost loved ones, those who have lost everything that they've had. I believe that's how their minds work. It's complete and total narcissism. Coming up, Donald Trump's response to the judge in his sentencing, non-sentencing, which has a lot of people on the left very upset and angry. Those people who had been told, don't worry, he's going to be marched in a jump. Remember we were all they had everyone so revved up that Trump was going to be in prison for this. There were conversations about whether or not a president could be in prison. How would that work? What would that look like? And if that was a conversation that was happening to some degree, I mean, even on conservative talk stations, those questions, the rhetoric was so heated, and there were some people in the media so convinced, and in the Democrat Party so bought into the idea that he was, with all the different charges, there's no way he was going to escape prison time. Could he still logistically operate as president of the United States from a prison cell? This was a conversation that was happening. So you can imagine those on the left who really believe the media, believe Democrats, believe, though they couldn't tell you what he was, quote, convicted of, they know that it was legit, to find out that, oh, by the way, this was all for nothing. They're quite upset. There's a lot of disappointments, a lot of unfulfilled expectations amongst the Democrat voting base. Latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Colorton, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 31. Tonight mostly clear with a low around 22. For your Tuesday, mostly sunny with a high near 39. And on Wednesday, sunny skies with a high near 41.
The big sentencing, which was no sentencing whatsoever, nothing whatsoever. Donald Trump. Now, this does allow for the appeal to go forward. It could not be an appeal until there was a sentencing, and the sentencing was nothing, which many people note shows what this was all about. Wasn't about justice. This was about trying to prevent Trump from becoming president, trying to prevent the American people from choosing Trump to be president. And so when that didn't work, it's just kind of going through the motions and, you're good to go. Trump was given time to express his thoughts.
Would your client like to be heard?
This is in court.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. This has been a very terrible experience. I think it's been a tremendous setback for New York and the New York court system. This is a case that Alvin Bragg did not want to bring. He thought it was, from what I read and from what I hear, inappropriately handled before he got there. A gentleman from a law firm came in and acted as a district attorney, and that gentleman, from what I heard, was a criminal or almost criminal in what he did. It was very inappropriate. It was somebody involved with my political opponent. Part of the records that we're talking about, they're saying, I just noticed where he said I was falsifying business records. Well, the falsification of business records, as they said, was calling a legal expense in the books where everybody could see them, a legal expense. In other words, that legal fees or legal expense were put down as legal expense by accountants. They weren't put down by me. They were put down by accountants. I didn't call them construction, concrete work. I didn't call them electrical work. I didn't call them anything. They called a legal fee or a legal expense. And for this, I got indicted. It's incredible, actually. Now, if you look, my attorney alluded to it, the top legal scholars and legal pundits in this country, the ones that are quoted all the time on television, that are making their views felt and highly respected people, have said, virtually everyone that I know of, I haven't seen any to the contrary, not one. And none of these people are not exactly friends of mine, to put it mildly. But they all said this is a case that should have never been brought. It's an injustice of justice. Very respected Jonathan Turley, Andy McCarthy, Judge David Rifkin, a wonderful man who just passed away, by the way, Greg Jarrett, Ellie Honig from CNN, of all places. CNN said that. Paul Ingratian, Alan Dershowitz, they all said this is not a case that should be brought. It's not, think about it, legal expenses are down as legal expenses, and I get indicted for business records. Everybody should be so accurate. It's been a political witch hunt. It was done to damage my reputation so that I'd lose the election, and obviously that didn't work. And the people of our country got to see this firsthand because they watched the case in your courtroom. They got to see this firsthand, and then they voted, and I won and got the largest number of votes by far of any Republican candidate in history, and won, as you know, all 7 swing states, won conclusively all 7 swing states, and won the popular vote by millions and millions of votes. And they've been watching your trial. They understood it. I wasn't allowed to use the lawyer-client privilege or the reliance on counsel. I had a lawyer that made this deal. Allowed to be put in. And that was terrible, unbelievable. And this is a man who's got no standing. He's been disbarred on other matters, unrelated. And he was allowed to talk as though he were George Washington. But he's not George Washington. He shouldn't have been allowed. The Southern District did a book of approximately 28 pages where I've never seen anything like it. They excoriated him. You wouldn't let it be put into evidence. So he was able to testify. as a witness, and I think it's a disgrace to the system. I was under a gag order. I'm the first president in history that was under a gag order where I couldn't talk about aspects of the case that are very important. I guess I'm still under, so probably I won't do it now. I assume I'm still under a gag order. But the fact is that I'm totally innocent. I did nothing wrong. They talked about business records, and the business records were extremely accurately counted. I had nothing to do with them. Any of it. That was done by an accountant or a bookkeeper who I think gave very credible testimony and was corroborated by what's happening in our country today with a city that's burning to the ground, one of our largest, most important cities burning to the ground with wars that are uncontrollably going on, with all of the problems of inflation and attacks on countries and all of the horrible things that are going on. I got indicted over calling a legal expense a legal expense. It was called a legal expense. I just want to say I think it's an embarrassment to New York, and New York has a lot of problems, but this is a great embarrassment. I believe that this and other cases that were brought, as you know, the DOJ is very much involved in this case. It's because that's the political opponent they're talking about. DOJ is very involved. You have a gentleman sitting right there from the DOJ who was from the DOJ's office. He was also involved with the New York State Attorney General's case. And he went from there to here. He went around and did what he had to do. He got them to move on me. But in the meantime, I won the election in a massive landslide. And what's gone on, this has been a weaponization of government. They call it lawfare. Never happened to any extent like this, but never happened in our country before. I'd like to exclaim that I was treated very, very unfairly. And I thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Trump.
All right, so that was on Friday, virtually attending the criminal sentencing hearing and to the New York City courtroom, Donald Trump. The only thing that I would have, just a little bit of pleasure if he had thanked the judge for the in-kind contribution to his election campaign, noting that that at least to some degree this lawfare helped his election by waking Americans up to what it is that the Democrats have done to our system and how it is that they have used law and order, used the justice system as a sword and shield, a shield for Democrats, a sword against those who aren't. And you know, I don't know whether or not you help get me across the finish line for, you know, if you're solely responsible for my election, but it certainly did help. So I want to thank you for that. I might have enjoyed that just a bit. Coming up, Joe Biden claiming that he thinks that he would have beaten Trump and that Kamala Harris would have beaten Trump as well, apparently forgetting that she is the one who ran against him. At an event, Joe Biden taking questions, he was asked, among other questions, whether he'd pardon himself, and he asked, well, what would I pardon myself for? Now, on one hand, one could think that he was making a point that I haven't done anything, or he just really genuinely didn't know. He was confused. He was also asked about the dropping out. He made comments recently that in this USA Today interview that was published last week, that he believes if he had stayed in the race, he would have beat Donald Trump, which, like I said, to some degree, poor Kamala, she was put in that position. She was put in that position by Joe Biden when he was forced out. The Democrats overturned the election in 50 states. And Biden then comes out and says, okay, I'm picking Kamala. She's the one who can do it. And then she fails. And he's like, well, I could have. It's like, thanks a lot, buddy. I mean, add insult to injury in this whole thing. And so the question keeps coming up because he's making this claim. And Democrats keep getting confronted with this question. And he was asked about it once again.
President, do you regret your decision to run for re-election? Do you think that made it easier for your predecessor to now become your successor?
I don't think so. I think I would have beaten Trump, could have beaten Trump, and I think that Kamala could have beaten Trump and would have beaten Trump. It wasn't about, I thought it was important to unify the party. And when the party was worried about whether or not I was going to be able to move, I thought, even though I thought I could win again, I thought it was better to unify the party. And it was the greatest honor in my life to be President of the United States, but I didn't want to be one who caused a party that wasn't unified to lose an election.
All right, now, we'll get to the Kamala part in a moment. He ended that declaring the opposite of what he started with. So he says, I believe that I could have beat him and I would have beat him. But then at the end, he says the reason that he dropped out was because he didn't want to be responsible for losing the election. But you just said you wouldn't have lost the election. Now, I'm pretty good at when somebody like Biden says something, you're like, well, he probably meant that, or he was talking about this over here. It was a little out of context. He kind of, jumped around a bit. And so it sounds like he was confused, but really I think this is what he meant. He straight up, as clearly as can be, states, I could have beaten him. I would have beaten him. Kamala could have beaten Trump and would have beaten Trump. What was he talking about? I can't think of any way around other than he forgot that she ran and lost against him. I'm tried to think of different maybe this is what he meant, but I mean it just seems pretty clear and pretty straightforward. I'll play it again here, in which he says I could have, or I would have beaten Trump. I could have beaten Trump. Kamala would have and could have beaten Trump.
Mr. President, do you regret your decision to run for re-election? Do you think that made it easier for your predecessor to now become your successor?
I don't think so. I think I would have beaten Trump, could have beaten Trump, and I think that Kamala could have beaten Trump and would have beaten Trump. It wasn't about...
So I'm not sure of any way around. Can you think of anything else he would have been talking about or meaning?
I mean, maybe he just thinks that somebody else ran.
Yeah, I can't think. I've tried to think, well, maybe this is what he was talking about. But,
no.
I mean, he's just, it's pretty straightforward and clear. And I really wish, I suppose the only reason to try to get a clarification from him in the moment would have been seen as just amplifying the already uncomfortable, embarrassing display that he's putting forth. But I really genuinely would have been interested if somebody said, well, she did run again. Who do you think lost to him? I mean, she's the one who lost, and to see what his response would have been. But anyhow, what will we do when old Joe's gone? I mean, we're not, we're just, is it next Monday?
Yes, I think so, yeah.
Just 7. Why do they keep putting him out there? Why at this point? What? Maybe he just is insistent. They're like, all right, whatever. It doesn't. Who cares? It doesn't make any difference at this point. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Colorton, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 31. Tonight mostly clear with a low around 22. For your Tuesday, mostly sunny with a high near 39. And on Wednesday, sunny skies with a high near 41.
Tim Walz made an endorsement to run the DNC. David Hogg. I mean, as if you didn't need any more evidence that this guy is a nut. David Hogg, this is what he posted. David Hogg represents exactly the kind of bold, dynamic, and courageous leadership our party needs right now. He has a unique ability to connect with the American people and to speak to the strengths of our party. I couldn't be happier to support him for DNC vice chair.
Yikes.
So I guess vice chair. Now, for those of you that don't remember David Hogg he was a student at Parkland High, and he tried to capitalize off of, and well, with the help of Democrats, he capitalized off the shooting at that school, portraying himself as some sort of like student reporter, and then he came out and began pushing a lot of left-wing activism, and so, of course, the media couldn't wait to put him in front of a camera because that's their favorite sort of person, someone that they can demonize anyone for questioning. So now he wasn't at the school during the shooting, but because he was a student there, anyone, how dare you question? He had friends that were there. Oh, how you can't question him. It was similar to the Greta Thunberg thing for a while because she was on the spectrum of autism, we were told, but we're supposed to believe her as an expert and trust her as an expert when it comes to the climate and science, even though she was a 12, 13-year-old girl at the time, and the reasons that they loved to put her up as a spokesperson was evident every time anyone ever questioned her. How dare you? Oh, how dare you're so mean. You're picking on a young girl. You're bullying this young girl. And David Hogg, it was a similar approach. Oh, how dare you? He was a student at Parkland High. He knew some of these students that were killed. You can't question him. Well, he's never done anything meaningful. He tried. Many of you will remember he decided because he hated the pillow guy, he was going to take down My Pillow. He was going to take down that empire. And that started with him going on social media and asking people if they knew of any factories that were available to buy. We followed this as it played out, and it was absurdly stupid. And it just was a demonstration of someone who has no concept of how the world works, none whatsoever. And it didn't last long before he announced that he was no longer carrying on that project. Someone else tried to take it on and I guess came up with some pillow company. But he's never really done anything. You couldn't be told, or if you were to ask, what has David Hogg done in terms of leadership other than been given attention? He didn't demand attention. He was given attention because he was a, quote, victim. I think, though, this is part of the problem that we have seen within the Democrat Party is their definition of leadership. To have Tim Walz say that David Hogg represents the exact kind of bold, dynamic, and courageous leadership our party needs right now. The problem that the Democrats have is that they pick people to be leaders that have no leadership skills. Leadership to them is just a label you give to whomever you think is hot right now, or whomever you think is just whomever you want to be in a position of authority, a position of power. You say, oh, they're an incredible leader. They're an incredible leader. It's just a label they give. Kamala Harris, for example. What did she ever lead? What did she ever do that you could say, oh, here's a time when she came in, this was the institution or the people she led. This is where she led them or it. This was the beginning, the middle, the end results of that leadership. Leadership demonstrates results. And leadership generally doesn't have to be something that you are told is leadership. It is by the virtue of the fact that naturally and organically people follow that individual. Donald Trump, as much as people want to, hate him, you can't deny he's a leader. The amount of people that just organically get behind him, not because he threatens them or tells them if you don't, then you're going to be put in concentration camps. If you don't, it's because you're a racist. It's because people naturally want to follow him, and they do. That is leadership. For these Democrats, they keep putting this label of leadership on everyone that they want to, they determine needs to be in a position of power, and that is all that is required is part of the reason that they don't have any real leadership, and it's why they're in the position that they're in now. Did you see the video that Trump posted? It's another trolling video that is supposedly what it is that he and Obama are talking about in the funeral. Have you seen this?
No.
It's great. So it is video of them, and then there's also some tight shots of like Hillary's face, and it is clearly AI generated audio. You can just tell by the cadence and patterns in which the two are speaking to each other. And then there's also little subtitles so that you get a better sense of it. And it's just, we'll get it posted so you can watch it. I'd play the audio for you, but yeah, it's a lot of it has to do with the visuals. But part of the conversation is Obama saying that he knew Trump would win. Part of it was Trump talking about how much Hillary hated him. I mean, it's a pretty funny thing. Most of the reason it's just so funny is the fact that Trump is pushing it out there as a way to troll people. And what he's playing off of here is the anger a lot of Democrats have about the fact that Obama was so friendly with Trump, that they acted like they were buddies. And the thing of it is that Obama's interaction and reaction and laughing at Trump, you could tell somebody's just trying to be polite. That's not what was going on. People who had listened to Obama and other Democrats claim that this guy was going to end democracy as we know it and throw them all in prison as political oppositions and he was literally Hitler, are now sitting there watching one of the deliverers of that message, Barack Obama, yucking it up, genuinely laughing and enjoying conversations with Donald Trump. And it has them hopping mad, not only because it's Donald Trump, but because there's this awakening that has been occurring, though I don't think it's going to stick. But some Democrats are recognizing the fact that all of that Hitler talk, all of that fascist talk, all of that dictator talk, it was total BS. And they knew it was BS when they were shoveling it out. So what you have are some of these Democrats, particularly, I'm going to play audio of Charlemagne talking about this on the show Friday, on his show Friday. I think that some actually feel a little bit embarrassed because they were out there regurgitating what it was that they were being told. And so these people like Obama and all of the Democrat apparatus and Morning Joe and these different outlets in the media had them going out there as voters, not only believing it, but spreading the word, and now they look like idiots. And while some Democrats don't mind looking like idiots, there are others that apparently have a bit of a problem with that. Charlemagne seems to be one of them. That audio next. I'm Nick Reed. It's not been really hasn't been much positive news for Democrats since the election. And this past week saw Donald Trump not sentenced. He was sentenced to nothing after they had been convinced that he was going to be serving prison time, that he was going to be in handcuffs in an orange jumpsuit. And they also have been served up this healthy heaping of observing the messengers of Donald Trump as Hitler, watching them now act like they're buddies with him. I think that what normal people fail to realize is how impacting that is on a lot of these people who are Democrat voters, because they actually believe, a lot of them, I know that's hard to believe. You and I, if you are somebody that doesn't vote Democrat, you're very used to being called names. You're used to the people you support being called names, racist, science deniers, homophobic, Hitler. And so we know this is just what they do. They just call people names. And so when we see Obama or Biden or any of these other Democrats being friendlier, like Jill Biden at that event a couple weeks ago, making gooshy eyes at Trump and yucking it up. To us, we just realize, well, it's because this is how they are. They call you names, but they don't obviously believe Trump is Hitler. So we fail to realize, though, that they have supporters who genuinely believe that. I mean, there have been articles written about how there's been a spike in gun purchasing within the LGBT community because they genuinely believe that they are going to be round up and put in concentration camps by Donald Trump, because this is what they've been told, and they believe it. When you recognize that people on the left, some, not all, but some, believe all of that rhetoric, you can imagine what it's then like to see that the people that you believed don't actually believe what they were saying. It's a betrayal. So I don't think it's so much that they hate Trump and they're angry that these folks or Obama's yucking it up with Trump, as much as there's a sense of betrayal they feel there. And that's part of what Charlemagne was talking about on his show last week.
I just think politics is all WWE. And, meanwhile, we out here, cutting off family and friends and business relationships because of who somebody chose to vote for. Like, stop running to kick that football, man. Cut it out. Politics is all WWE. It's really just that simple for me.
They really could have been talking about the NFL. They could have been talking about anything.
Yeah, but after you went so hard, calling somebody a threat to democracy and calling somebody a fascist, and now you just, chummy with the man. You told us he was a threat to democracy. To me, that's just terrible political optics.
It's WWE because they sit next to each other. They could have said anything. Trump could have said, "You smell that?" Somebody farted. He could have laughed. Like, you just never know.
They was calling him a fascist, just like his VP called him Hitler. Would you giggle with Hitler?
Now, what you hear there is Charlemagne's holding the point, and you've got, and this is the way the left rationalizes. These other folks on the show, well, they may just have been not talking. I mean, we don't know what they were talking about. And Charlemagne's point is, who cares what they were talking about? In fact, arguably, it would be more justified if it were something serious, because if this were literally Hitler and a dictator, you could argue, yeah, but that's an issue that really had to be addressed. And sometimes when it comes to real serious issues, you have to engage with people that are bad people. When it comes to just joking around and palling around, you don't have to do that with anyone, because there's nothing to gain from it other than just pure enjoyment, pure pleasure. So this backwards rationalization that Charlemagne's dealing with some of the other people, his sidekicks, the other people on his show there, that, well, you don't know what they were talking. I mean, they could have just been talking about something totally benign. That makes it worse if he's Hitler. To Charlemagne's point, are you going to sit there and giggle with Hitler? Now, what the Democrats bank on is the reaction of people that Charlemagne is having this discussion with here, and that is that they'll figure out a way to rationalize, oh, it's not that big of a deal, it's not that bad. But there are some Democrat voters who do feel betrayed, and they recognize that they were duped, and that Trump isn't Hitler. Trump isn't a dictator. Trump isn't going to do all of these horrible things that they said. And the proof is the fact that because if they really believed it, they would be afraid to be around Trump. But of course they're not. There will be some, however, that never, ever, 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 ever learn. And it is a human condition that some people cannot overcome, that when you attach yourself to someone, we see it all the time in relationships, that everyone else can recognize has betrayed you, has made a fool of you, has no respect for you, uses you, then when they don't need you, toss you to the side until they need you again, tell you that no one will ever love you as much as they love you, that no one would ever want you, that, and that, but they just will not leave that relationship. And that's what the Democrat Party is banking on. mean, L.A. is a perfect example. I know I keep going back to that, but I'm telling you. I mean, Gavin Newsom maybe, Karen Bass even maybe, but the same type of people will be picked in order to replace them. The exact same carbon copies. Because there are people that have themselves convinced that Democrat is good, Republican is bad. And by the way, this goes, this can be applied to anything, but in this context. And so because Democrats are good, even if your city burns to the ground, even if you lose loved ones, even if you lose everything that you have, at least you are continuing to support the good guys as opposed to the bad guys. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. There is, in case you didn't catch this, a rabies alert in Billings.
Oh.
Yeah, there was a posting made by the city of Billings on social media reporting that a skunk tests positive for rabies in Christian County, noting that you should keep your pets up to date on rabies vaccinations. A second skunk, this was the posting, Christian County, Missouri, a second skunk collected in Christian County has tested positive for rabies. The first skunk was collected in late December from the Clever area. The second skunk was collected this week in the Billings area. There have been no reports of any humans being bit. The reports of these infected animals serve as a reminder that rabies is present and that residents should be cautious around wildlife. Keeping pets up to date on rabies vaccinations is the best way to prevent infection in pets and their owners. In Missouri, the animals most often found with rabies are bats and skunks. I don't know why I just thought raccoons would be in there.
Yeah.
Bats make sense. You think of rabies and bats, skunks. I don't know that I would have guessed that. Of course, humans and pets can become exposed to rabies through bites or scratches even from an infected animal. So I think a lot of people recognize the biting part, but the scratching part may not necessarily be as known. Rabies deadly if people if medical care is not received before symptoms start, but it is completely preventable after exposure by promptly seeking medical care and receiving treatment called post-exposure prophylaxis. And so, of course, if a bat scratches or bites you, or if a skunk, I think a lot of times, of course, the animals act weird. Now, I don't know how you would tell that with a bat, but I believe animals, particularly that are nocturnal animals, if they're out during the day or if they act like they just act weird, then that could be a sign of rabies. But if you do even get scratched and you think, well, I didn't get bit, you definitely want to go to a doctor because you don't want them rabies. It's bad stuff. I didn't even know that was going on. Did you?
I
had
no
idea that was going on. I saw a posting from Billings on social media about it. That's how I knew about it. Minnesota School District has removed an LGBTQ children's book because it had nudity and S&M in it. Well, gosh, there are standards. Now, believe it or not, though, there are still people on the school board itself that were opposed to this, saying it's a slippery slope. Yeah, it is, but you're looking at it the wrong way here. I mean, at least we've gotten to the point where the people who want to expose children to pornography are admitting it. There was a period of time, and still most of them try to hide it. But, I mean, this straight up, it was a book called Rainbow Parade, and the book has illustrations depicting full nudity, including men in bondage gear. The Minnesota Star Tribune reported that the library media specialist, Tammy Van Moore, said, not all books are for everyone. Our goal is to have books that represent all students in our school district. But again, despite that, school board members expressed mixed opinions on the superintendent's decision to remove pornographic materials from the children's library. This is another one that I think a lot of people don't really realize going on because they cannot fathom that adults would be so open about trying to lure children in with pornography. But they're doing it. News is next. iwantagreathomeloan.com. You got home loan needs, you got refinancing needs. You have iwantagreathomeloan.com with the Carricker team right here in Springfield. Any advice you may be seeking, preliminary questions, or just to get the process started at iwantagreathomeloan.com. That site, I mention it as the gateway to getting the process started, but there's a lot of additional information that can be useful for you there, including tips on things not to do once that process begins. There are a lot of things that may seem counterintuitive, like, for example, you get a bunch of cash from somebody who died and left it to you, and you think, well, I'm going to drop that in the checking account, or my say wherever. It's gonna look even better. This is going to be helpful because it's more money that I have. That can throw things into a tizzy and make the process more difficult. I know it doesn't seem to make sense. All of this is generally the result of rules and regulations put in place in order to, make things better for you, the consumer, by the government. And as usual, it does the opposite. But that's where the Carrickers and that team, they come into place to help navigate you through that. And you can get bits of information, again, just by going to iwantagreathomeloan.com. Congressman Burleson, will be chatting with him coming up. There have been a number of stories regarding him. Breitbart has one. Beyond the ATF, Representative Burleson seeks to repeal the National Firearms Act. So we'll talk with him on that, plus more coming up. Weather also right now, the latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Colorton, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 31. Tonight mostly clear with a low around 22. For your Tuesday, mostly sunny with a high near 39. And on Wednesday, sunny skies with a high near 41.
Congressman Burleson joins us this morning. How do you do, sir?
Doing great. How are you?
Doing pretty good. Well, we got a week away. That's when the transfer will officially take place.
Yes. It'll be beautiful.
So what's that
I'm on
day?
my way to the airport now.
Oh, what's that? So what will that day look like for you?
It'll be. I will have to be there very early. Basically, we're just there for the decoration, right? That just sit and look pretty, like a kid in a Christmas church service, right? So that's what all we have to do is sit and attend and watch. But a lot of it is you get muckied up, and then you go and stand in the cold and sit and wait for a long time.
Yeah. Tell us a bit about this National Firearms Act. I have in front of me a piece in Breitbart. Beyond the ATF, Representative Burleson seeks to repeal the National Firearms Act. Tell us about this.
Yeah, a lot of people think that this is an act that's designed to keep you safe, but it's really more about keeping it or making it very complicated to own a firearm. For example, it classifies the different lengths of a firearm, and if you have a barrel that's below a certain number of inches, then it classifies that as a short-barreled rifle, and you have to get a tax stamp to that. You have to pay extra money. If you add a pistol brace to a pistol, it classifies it as a short-barreled rifle, and therefore you got to get a tax stamp. If you want to have a suppressor, you cannot have a suppressor unless you apply for it and you pay a tax. So it's not about keeping these things out of the hands of criminals. It's more about the whole thing is about classifying firearms and taxing you for the thing that you want to own. So it just needs to go away. I know that one of the things that we're also trying to do in this reconciliation package that I'm going to try to get in is to significantly reduce the tax stamp for all of these items down to, I don't know, maybe $1 or as little as I could possibly get it.
Now, what about the ATF itself? I know this Breitbart piece notes that you're still focused on abolishing the ATF. What does that look like?
Well, this is, this bill was started by Matt Gaetz last year. It's built some momentum. It reminds me of all the firearm bills that I passed in Missouri. You start with people kind of, puzzled. They don't think that this is possible. And then you have the conversation. And after a few years, people start to warm up to the idea. And the more they warm up to it, the more they look into the details and realize, okay, no, he's right. This agency is duplicative. The ATF, doesn't really do a whole lot on their own. They commandeer local law enforcement. They basically bribe our local sheriff. Now, our sheriff is pretty good. And back here, they're pretty good at being judicious and deciding when they're going to work with ATF or not. But at the end of the day, the ATF comes in with money dangling and to try to get our local law enforcement off of their duty and to be focused on their very stupid, unconstitutional gun grabs, like rounding up pistol braces.
We're talking with Congressman Burleson. I was asked a question and then asked if I could ask you as well. I don't know that you necessarily have much insight on this, but just we're curious on your thoughts. Trump with the inauguration and, different appearances that he's been making. And there are a lot of people that are concerned that he's going to be a target or that he is a target. And they worry about, some are saying he just needs to fly there, get sworn in, just do it quickly, not make a bunch of appearances and expose himself. Are there, and then I don't know if you've heard this as well. There was someone who claimed that at the inauguration there was a heightened state of alertness when it came to medical personnel or something. So all of these things together have some people worried about, are they aware of some sort of specific threat against Trump during the inauguration? So what are you hearing, if anything, about that? And what's your sense about the level of security for the event and any events leading up to it or around it?
I think that the around the inauguration is probably the most dangerous time in Washington D.C. And I'm just being honest. It's going to be. I mean, it's just obvious that it'll be a very dangerous time, and I think that especially because Trump is not going to have control over the Secret Service.
Yeah.
Not to say that Biden is going to be. I mean, he's been destructive on every other aspect, but we all recognize that this is going to be probably the most dangerous time that for him. And I hope that they're using extra precautions. I know that we're getting security memos and intel information regarding security, and so there are threats to his life and threats to the safety of the inauguration.
Let's talk about California, the fires out there. We see what I think in the minds of many Americans is pretty consistent when it comes to a vacuum of leadership of any institution or jurisdiction that is run solely by Democrats. A lot of finger pointing, a lot of that's not my fault, that's not my responsibility, and then criticism of anyone who questions. There, I imagine people are just thinking about all of the tax dollars that are going to go to California. Is all of that federal dollar-wise something that can be freed up by the executive? I know there's already been a commitment of some degree by Biden. Is Congress, sometimes we have these big disasters and then, Congress has to start coming into play here. What does that all look like?
Yeah, sadly, we're in an era of the United States where nobody is responsible for anything.
Right.
And apparently we try to throw money at acts of God, right? So, there was a time in which there were debates. I can't remember if it was Dane LeBoon or, another famous lawmaker who, when there was an event like this that happened, that said, "Look, we can all donate personally to this, but it's not my job to take other people's money and to be charitable with other people's money, with the taxpayers' dollars." And I think that's what this is. So I generally don't support, disaster aid. I think that the local community is responsible for the failed decisions that they've made. This community was focused on DEI. They were focused on all of these, superfluous programs that didn't provide water, safety, security for their community, the basic infrastructure. And so their communities should hold them accountable.
Right.
And I'm not going to be very supportive of the federal government and our taxpayer dollars here in Southwest Missouri, where we don't focus our money on all the silly nonsense. We put our money into our infrastructure. Our fire hydrants are working. They have water connected to them. Why? Because we pay taxes to make sure that it's working, and we hold our elected officials accountable when they fail us. This has to change in these blue states and in these crazy liberal cities, and I think that they need to. Somebody has to answer for all of these horrific decisions.
Yeah, and this is a pattern we've seen, and a lot of lawmakers do not want to take what I think is the right decision because they don't want to be accused of being heartless and horrible. But it is what happens is everyone ends up subsidizing the poor decision making of some of these elected officials and the people who choose the elected officials. They choose people that put them in a bad position, and then they expect the rest of us to turn around and bail them out whenever they suffer the consequences of it. And the problem with that is it makes it worse.
And what we're looking at really is my constituents who, on average maybe have a $150,000, $200,000 home, right? Who are going to be paying off these people that are living in $1 million homes in California because it's overly priced. And they chose that. They chose that life. And they chose to live in an environment where and vote for these people that are complete ignoramuses when it comes to managing the day-to-day life of government.
Congressman Burleson with us. Before we let you go this morning, anything else on the radar? I know this week, like we can talk about the inauguration. We're in the final countdown before that switch over power, and then everything going on in California. Oh, your thoughts on the sentencing of Donald Trump? I would like to get that on Friday, where Donald Trump was called virtually to court to be sentenced to nothing essentially, other than the label of a felon.
Yeah, I got to be with Trump during that court hearing, and I saw firsthand that Mershon was extremely biased. What you didn't see on camera is every time, in the courtroom, when you see the judge, whenever they would say, I object, or, whenever the attorneys would request something, Mershon would side with the prosecution every time, all day long.
Yeah.
And so it became clear. And then when we would walk in the back room, I would hear from all these attorneys like Alan Dershowitz, who would basically was screaming how frustrated he was at some of even the decisions that were happening within the courtroom. So I saw firsthand that it was a very biased, that it was a witch hunt, and then I got to be with Donald Trump on Friday. So I got to be with him at Mar-a-Lago. He invited me and the Freedom Caucus to come and have dinner and discuss the upcoming, few months with him and Elon Musk. That was it. I think that you could tell that weighed on him, but at the end of the day, he was positive that there's a path forward to move on and clear his name.
I know we talked, I think it was last week or maybe the week prior, about the concerns with Johnson as Speaker and how all that was playing out when it came to priorities. And having been there at Mar-a-Lago, Freedom Caucus, are you feeling positive about fiscal responsibility, that Trump is going to have Johnson do what is necessary?
I think that there, you got the fiscal hawks that want to make sure that we cut spending. That if we're going to continue to cut taxes and even extend the Trump tax cuts, it comes at a cost to the debt and the deficit, right? You cannot. I believe in tax cuts all the way. However, we can't lie to ourselves and say that we're not going to cause these tax cuts to create more debt. It will absolutely add more, increase the deficits and add more debt to our national debt, which is not what we want to do. This is an opportunity for spending cuts. The American people are excited about DOGE, but what my colleagues who like to spend money, the moderates, and yes, the speaker and leadership, what they're trying to do is to jam all of us fiscal hawks with when they talk about the big, huge bill, what they're talking about is trying to use phony numbers to overestimate the amount of growth that these tax cuts are going to create, to count things like tariffs that have never been executed, to count all of these things so that we don't have to actually cut any spending. That's what that dynamic is happening behind the scenes. And what they plan to do is, if you put it into one big bill, then it's going to make it very difficult for me and others, to vote against fixing the border and vote against the energy fixes and all of these other, good things, because we don't want to add, what we'll have to take is adding more debt to the deficit. And that's what the fiscal, the people who are not fiscally responsible want to do, is jam us fiscal hawks into voting for something that's not fiscally responsible.
Well, and I imagine if it gets down to where the numbers bear this out, you're going to end up with this sort of battle in which leadership would try to demonize the fiscal conservatives. If that does come to play, do you have a sense of Trump will at some point weigh in? And
I think Trump doesn't really. I think he wants to cut spending. That he does want that. That's what his stated goal is. However, just from the past, I'm not sure that that's a top priority. And so, like growing the debt, he's the guy who built all of his wealth on debt. So I'm not sure what his appetite is for reducing the debt,
right?
Particularly when it comes to leverage or against what accomplishing some of his goals. And I want to accomplish all these goals, but I don't think that we have to do so at the expense of our national debt. We can have, in my opinion, we can have our cake and eat it too. We can cut all the spending we need to give Trump the tax cuts that he wants. We can cut all the spending we need and then still fix the border and all of that. What I don't want to see happen is that we do all of these things and then we don't take this opportunity and cut spending.
Congressman Burleson, as always, great pleasure. And then I imagine we won't talk with you next Monday, but maybe we'll schedule a different day during the week. It'll be a busy day.
That'll be good.
All right. Talk to you soon. Stay safe and have a good rest of your week.
You too.
Congressman Burleson, everyone. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Grizzly Industrial, open to the public, non-commissioned customer service professionals, decades of experience in Springfield, over a quarter of a century. And at that, the largest woodworking, metalworking showroom in the entire world, 0% financing. And I love the good deal thing. That's me, dent and dings, which could mean just the box was damaged. And you can still get up to 60% off. That's an offering that they have there with that showroom floor. Grizzly Industrial, South Kansas Expressway and Battlefield in Springfield. Coming up, audio from Joe Rogan, Mark Zuckerberg. A couple of different areas of interest. One, Zuckerberg giving additional insight into the threats and intimidation that they received from the Biden administration in order to force censorship on political opposition, and a discussion about COVID. Rogan disagreeing with Zuckerberg a bit on that point, but increasingly what we find are the non-political people, if you will, are those who are able to have the most mature discussions in a political context. Instead of it just being one-dimensional name-calling, there's actual conversation going on, and that's some of the draw that we're seeing increasingly with these people that talk about things that impact all of us but aren't political wonks. And so you get good conversations and insightful ones, and that happened, I think it was on Friday with Rogan and Zuckerberg. So we have some of that also coming up. Pyramid Roofing Company, talk at text line 447-KSGF.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Colorton, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 31. Tonight mostly clear with a low around 22. For your Tuesday, mostly sunny with a high near 39. And on Wednesday, sunny skies with a high near 41.
Pyramid Roofing Company Talk text line. I joined late this morning. Have we talked about how good Sarah did Saturday on our show yet? Well, we talked about her doing it, but kidding. Yes, we did, actually. We talked about it earlier this morning, if you missed it. Saturday, 10 a.m. was the launch of Sarah's new show.
That's right. The Sarah Myers Show.
Sarah Myers
With
Show.
Sarah Myers.
Yes, indeed. Appropriately named. So you can catch that now. Is the podcast up?
It is, so it's not on third-party sites yet, like our Spotify
Okay.
and our iTunes. I'm kind of waiting for a approval on that,
All
so
right.
it should be up later this week, though.
Excellent. Excellent job.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Zuckerberg. Biden administration screamed, cursed, and acted threateningly when Meta refused censorship demands. Let me play. Let's start off playing the audio. So this is Zuckerberg on with Joe Rogan. Now, we knew, and we've known for some time, that the Biden regime has utilized their power of threats and intimidation in government in order to censor political opposition. This is something that was revealed several years ago, and gosh, even maybe further back than that. But it was some time ago, and the emails would be revealed. There would be very limited, yet some reporting on it, and how it was that, in fact, Democrats do utilize their power to censor. Something, of course, that they like to pretend as if Donald Trump, we should all fear him being a dictator, yet they are the ones that have demonstrated that they carry out those dictatorial personality traits upon the people of the country. And so here's Zuckerberg talking with Rogan a bit about that.
You know, if you go back to the COVID example.
Actually, no, I'm going to play that one second. All right, here, that's a separate conversation. This is about the censorship.
These people from the Biden administration would call up our team and like scream at them and curse. And it's like these documents it's all kind of out there.
Did you record any of those phone calls?
I don't think we were, but I think
I want to listen.
I mean, there are emails, the emails are published. It's all kind of out there. And they're like, and basically it just got to this point where we were like, no, we're not gonna take down things that are true. That's ridiculous. They wanted us to take down this meme of Leonardo DiCaprio looking at a TV talking about how 10 years from now or something, you're going to see an ad that says, okay, if you took a COVID vaccine, you're eligible for, for this kind of payment, like this sort of like class action lawsuit type meme. And they're like, no, you have to take that down. And we just said, no, we're not going to take down humor and satire. We're not going to take down things that are true. And then at some point, I guess, I don't know, it flipped a bit. I mean, Biden, when he gave some statement at some point, I don't know if it was a press conference or to some journalists, where he basically was like, these guys are killing people. And I don't know, then like all these different agencies and branches of government basically just like started investigating, coming after our company. It was brutal. It was brutal.
Wow.
Now, Zuckerberg, I've tried to take a real step back view on this, and he is providing some insight that I believe. I don't think any reasonable person would not believe that this administration would start coming after his company if they did not censor his political opposition. The frustration that so many Americans would have is that it was clear the censorship was one-sided. It was political in nature. And our frustration would understandably be aimed at Zuckerberg and Facebook. And this is just an evaluation. It's not an excuse. It's not saying, oh, well, what he did was the right thing to do. But when you have people that have the ability to throw you in prison coming after you, telling you to censor this, to censor that, and then when you decide, no, I'm going to stand up against this, they threaten, they start investigating your company and your business. You can understand how. Again, I'm not saying it's right, and I know I understand a lot of people see that as well. Why didn't he come out and talk about this? Why didn't he expose these people? And perhaps he saw what happened when people did do that. We know what happens to whistleblowers under the Biden administration. I recognize, as many of you do, the results of not standing up against tyranny. You end up with, and what we ended up with, potentially an election being altered because of that censorship, which was, of course, the goal of the administration. I think about some of the testimony that Zuckerberg would give before Congress when he was being grilled by Republicans, obviously, over the censorship. And in the context of knowing that he was being threatened, it takes on a different dynamic for me, and I don't want anyone, again, to think that this is approval of the way that it's just looking at the landscape, understanding what was going on. And this is, I mean, to me, it's like a witness testifying that's supposed to be testifying against the mob, and the mob, and they don't have any choice. They have to come testify, but the mob is sitting in the audience with the witness's mother next to the mob boss guy, or they've been threatened ahead of time. You better watch what you say. And seeing that witness up there, very essentially trying to excuse what was happening, and not implicating those that the witness is afraid of. And at the time when you see the testimony of Zuckerberg regarding censorship, regarding the political nature of it, at the time and in the moment, you're seeing it as, well, here's some left-wing guy, and he is, just being evasive in his answers. And I don't know, for whatever reason, I assume that he's left-wing, and maybe it's just because of all of this over the years that has happened with the censorship and the way that they operate. But you wonder if it, I don't know. It's just a different dynamic knowing that during those moments of testimony, when he was being evasive, when he was excusing the censorship as not censorship, knowing that at the same time he was on the end of threats from the administration. You think about all the Zuck bucks, the dollars that were disproportionately funneled to areas of the country that are beneficial to Democrats in order to help get out the vote stuff. How much of that was just trying to buy protection? I don't know. Maybe he would have done that anyhow. That may be some cause that's near and dear to him, or it could have been him buying protection. What do I have to do to get you guys to stop threatening me? The fact that he is, talking about it now, I'm glad that is occurring. I think that most people, I don't know, some people may see it as excuse making. I don't see it as excuse making, because that would suggest that it didn't happen. And I believe that it did happen, just based off everything we know from this administration. And some, again, are going to say, well, he still did the wrong thing. He should have stood up. And it's easy. I recognize that it's a lot easier to take that position, as correct as it may be, when you're not the one who's receiving those phone calls. Who knows what threats to his family came about. I mean, there's just a lot we don't know. And I think that it muckies up the dynamic a bit, as opposed to what I think many of us sensed, and that was Zuckerberg was just some left-wing activist that had this power and was using it because he wanted to personally alter the outcome of the election and benefit Democrats. And knowing that that this was part of some massive pressure campaign and they were threatening him and his livelihood, it just, I think, changes the landscape a bit for some people. Now, there was a conversation about COVID. I want to play this. I thought it was an interesting exchange. We're going to take a break. And he is differentiating a bit. Zuckerberg is attempting to, and I think he genuinely thinks this in the moment, that he felt there was a difference between the pressure to censor based off political beliefs as opposed to the effort to censor COVID information, because one was for a good reason and the other wasn't. And Rogan's response to that coming up next. I'm Nick Reed. Okay, part of the sit-down discussion Mark Zuckerberg had with Joe Rogan had to do with COVID. Now, we played the audio earlier in which Zuckerberg was revealing, I think to a greater extent, the amount of threats that he was receiving from the Biden administration, all these different departments calling, screaming, cussing at them, and then coming after his business. Started doing investigations when he would not comply with their political censorship. He, however, as he explains to Joe Rogan, felt that the attempts to censor information regarding COVID was a whole different thing.
You know, if you go back to the COVID example, I think in that case, they were doing something, their goal of trying to get everyone to get vaccinated was actually, I think, a good goal. Right, it's like
it was a good goal if it worked,
yeah.
If it was real, like if it was a sterilizing vaccine, if it really did prevent people from getting COVID, if it really did prevent people from infecting others or transmitting it, but it didn't. Well, so it wasn't a good deal because it wasn't based on real data.
Yeah, but also even if it were, right, it's like if I mean, I think that still on balance, knowing everything that we know now, I still think it's good for more people to get the vaccine. But the government still needs to play by the rules in terms of, you know, not like you can't just suppress true things in order to make your case. So I that's kind of my view on it is I'm not sure in that case how much of it was like a personal political gain that they were going for. I think that they had a kind of goal that they thought was in the interests of the country, and the way they went about it, I think, violated the law.
Well, there's a bunch of problems with that, right? There's the emergency use authorization that they needed in order to get this pushed through, and you can't have that without valid therapeutics being available. And so they suppressed valid therapeutics. So they're suppressing real information that would lead to people being healthy and successful in defeating this disease. And they did that so that they could have this one solution. And this was Fauci's game plan. I mean, this is the movie American Buyers Club, or Dallas Buyers Club, rather. That's Fauci in that movie. That was with the AIDS crisis. This exact same game plan. It was played out with the COVID vaccine. They pushed one solution, this only one, suppressed all therapeutics, through propaganda, through suppressing monoclonal antibodies, like all of it. And that was done, in my opinion, for profit. And they did that because it was extremely profitable. The amount of money that was made was extraordinary during that time.
And, of course, Rogan's right, and Zuckerberg is not in terms... Now, Zuckerberg taking the position there that they, regardless of the motivation, that what they did was illegal. But there, this idea that there was nobility behind it, at least it was something that was for a good cause. This is where you get yourself into the danger zone, because free speech is not about good or bad. It's free from those judgments in the context of whether it should be banned or not. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if the opinion is correct or incorrect, if it comes from an expert or if it comes from someone who doesn't know what they're talking about, but they're just asking questions. And it was done with a purpose. And the thing of it is that is just really frustrating, I think, for so many people, is that those who fancy themselves or anoint themselves to be the deciders as to truth and untruth are the most unworthy amongst us to make those decisions. The first hour played audio of Gavin Newsom telling Biden that he needs to do something about the misinformation that's being spread out there about these fires. Don't you love it when some of the people that are just known to be the most dishonest people are the ones who deem themselves worthy of dictating what can and can't be said in the name of truth? It would be one thing, though I would still disagree because it would be wrong, if the decision was made to censor information based off of truth, if the people that were making the decisions were collectively viewed as the most honest, straightforward people in our culture. But if you ask people what grouping of individuals are the least trustworthy, certainly politicians are going to be within the bottom 2 or 3, or top 2 or 3 of the most untrustworthy. And the audaciousness of those people to declare that they should be able to tell us, or other people that think they should be able to tell us. That's what really gets me. Of course, they're the same people that will gripe and complain and note the realities of how inefficient government is when it comes to this over here, that over here, but then they want government to run healthcare. They're the people that say you can't trust cops, but they're the only ones who should have guns. They're contradictions. And in that vein, there are a number of Americans who will tell you that politicians you can't trust and they're all a bunch of liars, but then want politicians to make the determination as to what information is true and not true and who can speak it. I think conversations like the ones that Joe Rogan would have there with Zuckerberg are good, and there is a lot that can come from them because people get to hear diverse perspectives in a respectful manner. And the reason I like it is because I believe that in instances like that, generally speaking, for the most part, the person who is telling the truth is going to be the one that is believed or understood by the most people. It's not always going to be that way. This, incidentally, is why people on the left in particular don't like people like Joe Rogan. Don't like people like Elon Musk. They don't like people who want to sit down and actually talk about things, because when you do that, it increases the likelihood that the truth is what is going to surface, and that people will, in that sort of environment. And this is how we long operated. And this, by the way, is why the founders recognized the freedom to speak one's mind and share one's ideas was so important. It wasn't just a byproduct of freedom. It was recognized as that's the only way you advance society. One, if you're allowed to call out corruption, but also ask questions. This is how you work through things. It's a bit of brainstorming or crowdsourcing of ideas, if you will. This is how you advance a society, you advance intelligence, you advance cultures. And anytime anyone wants to put a halt to that, it's because they recognize truth is not on their side. And so they want to shut down any conversation that they recognize might lead to the truth. And it's why they again, the Joe Rogans and the Elon Musk that allow for a more vibrant, free expression of thoughts and ideas, even if it's unpopular, it's why they can't stand them. Because they fear hearing these conversations. They fear people hearing these conversations and growing from them and learning from them. You know, the reference here to the fact that because of the way that the left has behaved, literally over this stuff, had people, their supporters, cut off family members. That's just evil. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Now, one of the bonuses of hitting LSK in Lebanon is you can hit Cornerstone Pizza on the way there. Some of it's just nostalgia, but there's a Cornerstone Pizza. Some of you may know it in Lebanon. I don't even know if it's that. I love it. I've just always loved it. I think second or third grade when it was across the street from where it is now, going to Cornerstone Pizza. I just really wish they'd expand. Somebody should encourage them. You know what? You need one, the Springfield area, the Republic area. You need to open a Cornerstone Pizza somewhere over there. I'd work weekends there. That's just a recommendation for you. If you're heading over to over there to Lebanon, you're thinking, where are we going to eat while we're over here? Well, Cornerstone Pizza. J.D. Vance making a big and controversial clarification on January 6th pardon, making some waves about what is anticipated to some degree pardons of those that have been politically persecuted because of their presence in the Capitol on January 6th.
January 6th pardons, President Trump says there's a process. Where is the line drawn on who will and wouldn't be considered for a pardon?
I think it's very simple. Look, if you protested peacefully on January the 6th and you've had Merrick Garland's Department of Justice treat you like a gang member, you should be pardoned. If you committed violence on that day, obviously you shouldn't be pardoned. And there's a little bit of a gray area there, but we're very much committed to seeing the equal administration of law. And there are a lot of people, we think, in the wake of January the 6th who were prosecuted unfairly. We need to rectify that.
I think that's a good, straightforward answer. I know that there are some people who believe absolutely everyone one giant blanket pardon, but I think that differentiating that, particularly the vast majority of those who did absolutely nothing wrong. They walked in when law enforcement opened the doors and waved them in. That there is a difference between those who did commit acts of violence. I think ultimately, in the end, that it's going to be remedied to a large degree, as best as it can be. Glenn Beck's next. I'm Nick Reed.